What are the 5 most powerful things we can do to protect ourselves against wireless radiation?
Thank God I finally found the European I've been looking for 25 years. I was working with the Swiss, it didn't work out. They had a very expensive unit that they weren't willing to put into 110 for the North American and South American marketplace. So a Russian called Shnurov, he's actually formerly a Ph.D. that worked with the Navy of Russia, was brought in when they were having young men get sick and die who were in submarines with the 5G technology. Now, what was happening is they'd go on these long voyages, months at end, and the 5G technology was being used. It was bouncing off the walls of the submarine, not leaving. And these kids were coming back with tumors and neurological problems and nervous breakdowns. And I mean, the list went on. So he was brought in, knew nothing about this. He was just a typical scientist, a PhD. And he basically discovered that they had no way to prevent that other than neutralizing it. So we created a technology that now, thank God, is inexpensive. We use it here, tell our guests to use it. We teach our guests about it. It's called WAVE, W-A-V-E, Rider, R-I-D-E-R. It's about $1,200, and it takes care of a large home, not a mansion, not a 20,000 foot home, but frankly, even if you had a 20,000 foot home, you only live in an area of it. So for most homes, I'd say 98% of the homes, this is adequate. You put it in, and it really, really works. You may want to read about it, Wave Rider. This whole property, we brought a physicist, crazy friend of mine in here years ago. This has been protected since we opened our doors at Hippocrates. But this was a very expensive endeavor. Thank God they made the technology as good, if not better, and frankly, cheap at this point. And now, number 2, on your phones, you should be putting a shungite form of geometrics that we put together called HHI 360. It's a little one that's the best one, takes care of 5G directly on the phone. They have a larger one that you put on the bottom of your router, if you're near that. I also have that in my electric car. I put it there. Also, around my neck, you're going to see HHI Pulse. Now, this was different technology developed by Germans and Russians. And I learned about this a number of years ago in Europe, and I brought the doctor here because I liked him so much. I wanted to see if I was wacky. And I sicked my bulldog scientist friends on him. And we all fell in love with the guy and said, this is a legit guy. And my wife, Anna Maria, because I got impatient with the German mentality. I love them, but got impatient. They made this. And this you wear near the solar plex, should never come off 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And this acts like a lightning rod. It doesn't eliminate 5G from the atmosphere. That's ridiculous. This acts like the lightning rod that collects the 5G. It's more attractive this is than your body for it. So you want it to hit that. You want it to be neutralized so that you're not constantly being zapped by 5G and other radiation that's out there today. So this is number 2, the protection. Number 3, make sure you're not living in close proximity to a cell tower. There's a wonderful documentary on that. You may want to look at it, look it up on cell towers on Google, and you'll find it. They went into New York City and showed that the closer you are to a cell tower, the higher incidence of tumors you have in your body. My wife's country is Sweden, which is really a remarkable country. They tell the truth to the citizens, almost always, not always, but most of the time. They came out years ago and said, if you live within a mile of a train track, you're going to have more cancer. So even train tracks admit it, and the closer, the more, of course. So a lot of these things we take for granted. I never thought about them years ago. Who would ever think? First time I saw a cell phone, I got all excited. Wow, you can do this without a wire in a car. And little did I think that this is going to zap my head. This is going to create brain cancer for children. Why? We said early on, it's one of the big killers of our children today, brain cancer. It was unheard of half a century ago. And so these are things, staying away from that. Also making sure if you live inside of an apartment building where you have people below you on the side of you, you must get these protection devices. If you're out in the countryside and you're not on computers more than an hour a week, forget everything I've said. But if you come into a city or if you live in an apartment building, I mean, these are mandatory things today. You say, well, if this was true, how come we don't hear about it? They'd rather spend the cell industry millions of dollars telling you it's safe than millions of dollars to make it safe. And if you want to get to the deep end of this, read the world's leading authority on it, Dr. Hardell, Hardel, an oncologist, a cancer doctor out of Sweden. And remember, Sweden and Finland were the place where cell industry was created. He's been begging them as a cancer doctor since the first inception of this stuff. Please, please, please put protection into these things. Millions of dollars telling you it's healthy. In the United States, one of our colleagues who's been at The Real Truth About Health, Dr. Devra, D-E-V-R-A Davis, was actually a top scientist, the top scientist at Bill Clinton's administration for 8 years. Read her work. Amazingly brilliant work. One of the great teachers and great people that I happen to know, Dr. Devra Davis. Look at The Real Truth. Look at the archives of The Real Truth. She also does other lectures, but she's done a spectacular job. Look at the work she's done with Stanford University, Yale University, University of California, Exeter University, University of Sydney. You know, this is no small thing. And you say, well, how come if this is so bad for you, we don't know? If Stanford, University of California, Exeter University, Yale University is doing research and saying it causes cancer, you think you'd know. But these bastards don't want you to know because it's a multi-trillion-dollar industry. Don't talk about billions. That's small change to these people. So you need to protect yourself. And number 5, I think it's really important for you to realize you live in the real world. Unless you want to become a monkstress or a monk and move to the Himalayas that's probably being zapped too by satellites, you got to live with this stuff. And you can become neurotic. And I see a lot of neurotic people about this stuff. And neuroses and insanity and fear will make you sicker than bad food. And the combination of all of that, eating bad food, you're really going to get sick and you're going to die before you should. So there are people today at the heightened levels of this that are what we call universal conductors, that they come here quite often. We help them. That they are so frazzled by this, that they're hypersensitive. You and I are sensitive to it. We may not feel it, but they're hypersensitive. They come into a room with this stuff, they start shaking. And when they go to the average doctor out there, they're told they're psychiatric, there's something wrong with it. They're not. This is a new type of disease, electromagnetic field disease, that, by the way, is finally being acknowledged in some of the more progressive medical institutes in the world. Up until now, they've been put into nut houses, these people. And the fact of the matter is, isn't it scary that we, from our modern electronics, created a new disease that creates psychiatric and neurological disorders? And some of them, frankly, I'm not sure we'll ever reverse. That the sheathing, the nerve, the myelin sheathing on their nervous system have been melted in their case. Don't ask me why it does that to one and not to another. I don't know that answer.
Why was it important for you to come back and speak with us here again at the Real Truth About Health conference?
Well, the Real Truth About Health is not just the name of an organization or a conference. It means what it says. Let's go through each word. Real truth. You know, today, the powers that be know they can confuse and manipulate you by fake or false news. And the ones who are literally saying that other things are fake news are the ones giving you the fake news. So let's start with that to begin with. And when Stephen came to me, it was a very cold night in January. I was just done doing a conference in downtown New York City and sat in the car with me before he drove me to the hotel and said, Brian, what would happen if I took my money? You didn't ask me for money. You didn't ask me for anything else. My money, and created an organization where we could focus in on the work that you and Anna Maria did. I said, that's really generous of you, Stephen. And so the first Real Truth conference we held was a 3-day conference where only people you could listen to is Anna Maria and I. And you can see this on, and I guess it was somewhat interesting. But the second year I said to him, you know, we know a lot about a lot of things, but we don't know a lot about everything. Why don't we broaden this thing? And Stephen, out of his own generosity, Stephen Shore, one of my favorite human beings on the planet Earth, because he's the real thing. He doesn't say one thing and do another. He says what he does. He did that. So we went into New York City and we invited other leaders in. And only people who are not going to back down. If he or I or one of us asked a political question that they gave us some bullshit answer, they were either not invited or disinvited to come there. So he's managed to really bring almost everyone onto that stage that wasn't shy, that had their own passion. I think truth is only accompanied by passion, and tenuous bullshit is accompanied by frailty and lack of conviction. And so convicted people, believing people, experienced people, knowledgeable people, but not only on health, because we're talking about cell phones. So I'm not the expert on that. I can sound a lot smarter than you on that, but I'm not the expert. Who is? We bring Dr. Davis in. Who's the woman that literally saved the farming community in India? We didn't read about it. We bring the woman in who saved the seeds in India and saved the lives of God knows how many tens of thousands of farmers who were committing suicide after Monsanto took them over after thousands of years of being farmers. We don't talk about vaccines being bad because we're anti-vaxxers. We bring the world's experts in and we show you, this is your knowledge. You make a choice if you want to be vaccinated. And that's why I'm back here, and I'll be here every single day until the day I die, hopefully 100 years from now. And I'll always support the real truth, and I'll always support Stephen Short, and I love him. Thank you for what you do.
Brian, thank you for everything you've meant to the conference along the way, for all of your meaningful work at Hippocrates and beyond, and of course, for being here today and sharing everything with our audiences. Thank you very much.
Be well.
Be well. Good to see you again.